God brings this newly created bride to Adam, this newly created wife to Adam, and presents her to Adam, and Adam's response is nothing less, I believe, than a shout of ecstasy, if you will. His response is, "Oh, this at last is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh." These, you will note, are the first recorded human words in the biblical narrative. These are the first recorded words in human history. Adam's response to Eve was, "This is now bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh." One thing that's very interesting in that statement is that he is actually using language that would later on in the history of the Hebrew nation of Israel become something of a kinship formula. When we speak of our near relatives, we speak of our what kind of kin? Our blood kin. They are blood relation to us. But that's not how the Hebrews referred to their near kinsmen. You recall the story of Jacob, and we actually even used the story of Isaac and Rebekah, and how God brought Rebekah to Isaac to be his wife. And you recall one of his sons, Jacob, then after he comes of age, goes back to the house of his mother, Rebekah. And you recall in Genesis chapter 29, verse 14, that when he goes back, he discovers that her brother Laban is still living. And Laban joins him, or he sees Jacob, and Jacob explains to him that he is the son of Laban's daughter Rebekah. And what is Laban's response? "Surely you are my bone and my flesh." And he stayed with him a month. You see that kinship formula there? Instead of saying, "Oh, you're my blood relation," Laban says, "You are my bone and my flesh," indicating that because of him being the son of Rebekah and being Laban's nephew, that Laban considered a very near kinship with this young man, Jacob. You see this formula used throughout the Old Testament. You recall when David was anointed king and Saul began to resist him and tried to kill him, and David had to flee for his life. After many years, God delivered him and Saul died. And when Saul died, look at what the tribes of Israel came to David and said. Then all the tribes of Israel came to David at Hebron and said, "Behold, we are what? We are your bone and your flesh. We are your near kinsman. You are our king and you are our brother. We are your bone and we are your flesh." You see that kinship formula. Instead of saying blood kin, they said, "We're bone and flesh. You are my bone and you are my flesh." Interestingly, the Hebrew word for bone literally, most literally interpreted, means essence or substance. It's actually an idiom for self. "You are bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh" communicates that you are a near kinsman to myself. That is the language that Adam uses when God brings to him his bride. But it's even more intimate as we go further into the text. We will see that Adam views this relationship as even more intimate than a near kinship, because he goes on in the text and exercising. Remember, he's just gotten through naming all the fowls of the air and the beasts of the field, and God brings him a wife, and the first thing he does is he names that wife. He names this beautiful creature that God has brought to him, and here's how he names her. She shall be called woman because she was taken out of man. Literally, in the Hebrew word for man is ish, and the Hebrew word for woman is isha. He's saying literally she is isha because she is taken from ish. You see, you hear the rhyming of the words there? That is actually the poetic rhyming of this word, of these words here, is Adam celebrating the nearness of his relationship to this beautiful creature that God has brought to him to be his wife. She shall be called woman because she has taken out of man. He is actually declaring her nearer kin to him than even a brother or a father or a mother or a niece or a nephew. He's declaring the closeness of that relationship. She is woman because she is taken out of man. Adam literally embeds his own name in hers in the text. He is anticipating the deepest kind of intimacy with this creature that God has brought to him to be his wife. Oh, this at last is bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. Therefore she shall be called woman because she was taken out of man. Do you hear the intimacy of those words? Calvin kind of puts words in Adam's mouth, and I thought this was very beautiful the way he put it because it sums up the passage very, very well. He says that Adam says, "Now at length I have obtained a suitable companion, a fit helper, if you will, who is part of the substance of my flesh, and in whom I behold, as it were, another self." Adam is looking upon a creature that he regards as so near kin to himself that he is looking upon someone who is a part of him. Do you see the intimacy of that bond there? Great intimacy here. So we see in this text that when Adam responds to the gift of the bride, he is using what would become the Hebrew idiom for near kinship. And he declares this wife given him by God to literally be a very part of his very essence. And he viewed her as being so vitally connected to him and of such near kinship to him that she was literally an extension of himself. Now, as we consider the principles related here in the text, let's not forget that this is foundational. This is the beginning principles of how we are to relate to one another as man and wife. And this intimacy that is communicated here clearly indicates that Adam sees his wife as another self, as an extension of himself, as part of his very essence. She is part of him in this language. Contained in this is what the Apostle Paul terms a profound mystery. A profound mystery. So near and so indivisible is this union between a man and his wife. It's so close and it's so intimate that there exists no other relationship within the created realm with which marriage might rightly be compared. Think about what has just taken place here. Adam has named all of the fowls of the air and the beasts of the field. And among all of those fowls and among all of those beasts, there was both male and female.